Rambam, we're learning the laws of Shabbos, continuing. Into the fine details. Chapter 12. Got it? Second. Okay. A person who kindles even a smallest fire is liable. Other things we had an amount, right? But a fire is a fire, right? Large amount, small amount. A fire is a fire. So therefore the halacha is whatever the amount. Provided he needs the ash that it creates. I don't understand what that means, needing the ash. Contrary to, it was necessary to kindle a fire in order to cook the herbs used for dye. Similarly, much of the metal work was performed after the metals were heated in a fire. So what do you mean you need the ash? And it means you need the fire to cook herbs. Why is that ash? So I don't understand what seems to be in the explanation contradiction.
Is the ash the part of the dye to make the dye?
No. It's to cook, no? You kindle a fire in order to cook the herbs. The herbs are the dye, not the ash. Right? So I don't know what it means exactly by that. Right. However, should a person kindle a fire with destructive intent, he's not liable for his causing ruin. Right. In other words, it's the idea of malacha, of work, means constructive, not destructive. Nevertheless, listen to this. A person who sets a fire to a heap of produce or a dwelling belonging to a colleague is liable, even though he's acting destructively, because his intent is to take revenge on his enemy. Through this act, he calms his feelings and quiets his rage. So it's constructive. His destruction is constructive. Right? He is comparable to a person who rends his garment over a deceased person or in rage on Shabbos, or of a person who injures a colleague in an argument. These individuals are considered to be performing constructive activity because of their evil inclinations. In other words, it's constructive for their evil inclination. It's not constructive for them as a person to grow, to be a mensch, right? That's not what it means. It means I feel good, when you I got back to him. I got him back. I feel good. That's constructive. It's not constructive to live a proper life. As a matter of fact, it's against what we just learned in Chumash Rashi, right? That you shouldn't take revenge. You're not allowed to. Why is Torah tell us not to take revenge? Because a person wants to take revenge. If you never wanted to take revenge, Torah wouldn't have to tell you to, right? That's human nature. So, in other words, it's constructive for the feelings of the natural human condition of the individual to do this. So therefore, that's why it's called in these terms, halachic terminology, as constructive.
But then how could one construct a fire with destructive intent on Shabbat?
They're saying you're not allowed to.
What is?
I mean, if on Shabbos you're upset at your neighbor did something to you, you're really upset, and you went and started a fire and destroyed something of his. Are you liable or not? Fire is destructive, right? So that's the question. What your actions were destructive. So then how would that be a malacha when malacha is constructive? Right? So if I'm creating a fire to boil up the herbs so I can create a dye, that's constructive. But to destroy the neighbor's property because Reuven got upset at Shimon, that's destructive. How's that a malacha then? So that's what he explains. The reason why it's a malacha, and you're liable. You're not allowed to do it. That's not the question. The question is, are you liable? Right? You're liable. Why? Because it was constructive. It made you feel good.
No, this is higher up. It says with a destructive intent.
Huh?
That's the second sentence. However, should a person kindle a fire with a destructive intent?
Yeah. So destructive is not malacha. That's the point. Destructive is not called malacha. Malacha is called a constructive work.
But I'm thinking in terms of what sort of context that can happen. So what
he just said your neighbor, you set fire to his heap.
But you feel good about doing that.
Right, so that's constructive. The act is not constructive. The act is destructive, but the feelings you have are constructive. So therefore, you are liable. The whole point is that you're liable for that action. You don't see the difference? That constructive, when you're boiling a pot of water that's got herbs in it, right? That's constructive, right? As opposed to burning down the neighbor's heap. Is destructive.
But I'm looking at the intent where it says a destructive intent, and it says he's not liable.
No, but he is liable.
No. Higher up, it's a second sentence. However, should a person kindle a fire with a destructive intent,
he's not liable. Unless he did it to his neighbor to get back at him, because that's considered constructive. The act is not constructive, but the outcome for him is constructive, and therefore that makes him liable. I'm not certain what you're not getting.
No, I'm just looking at the not liable part. However,
yeah, that's if Reuven took this box of Kleenex and destroyed his own box of Kleenex, destructively, not having a pleasure from it, right? Just destructively, he would not be liable.
Okay, but it's prohibited, but it's liable.
He would not be liable then. Then he wouldn't be liable because the act is destructive, not constructive. And malacha has to be constructive in order to be full biblical term of work. Okay? That's clear now?
Okay.
Similarly, a person who lights a candle or wood, whether to generate warmth or light, is liable. Why? In other words, the act itself, you're being destructive. But there is an outcome that's the consequence is, right? Constructive. Therefore, you're liable. A person who heats iron in order to strengthen it by submerging it into water is liable for performing the derivative of forbidden labor of kindling. Also, but there's also a chiddush there, because it's not even the act itself of burning, right? You're burning the iron. You want to strengthen it, but what's strengthening it? Not burning it. After burning it, putting it into the water is what strengthens it. Nonetheless, you're liable for burning, for kindling. Again, there's a nuance there. If you don't have your Talmudic caps on, you might not be getting this. Okay, person who extinguishes a fire, or even the smallest size, is liable. So now extinguishing the fire, as small as it might be, as large as it might be, you're liable. This includes both one who extinguishes a candle and one who extinguishes a coal that comes from wood. In contrast, the person who extinguishes a glowing piece of metal is not liable. Huh. Well, is this nuanced? You're not, not liable means it's forbidden, but you're not liable, right? Why? Because there's nothing constructive that happened over here. The glowing piece of metal, right? If you put it into water afterwards, you hardened it, and that was what you wanted to do to harden the metal. So then that's constructive, right? But over here, just to extinguish a glowing piece of metal, you wouldn't be liable because there's nothing that came out of this different, right? Except when you have a coal that was from wood, well, you do have something because you have a new entity here. You have a coal versus a piece of wood. So that's a new entity. That's called constructive. Because there's a change, right? If, however, the person sins to purify the metal, he is liable because now there was something constructive here. Yeah, you got rid of all of whatever impurities that were in the metal. You got rid of them. This indeed is the practice of blacksmiths. They heat the iron until it glows like a coal and extinguish it in water to seal it. This is a process of purification for which one is liable. It is a derivative category of forbidden labor of extinguishing, right? Mechabe in Hebrew.
What is it called?
Mechabe in Hebrew. Right? Mavir is fire, and is kindling. And mechabe is extinguishing. Okay, it is permissible to extinguish a glowing piece of metal in the public domain so that many people will not be injured by it. See, you see, here's a distinction. There's a glowing piece of metal. You could put it out because people might get hurt by it, right? Because that putting out, if it was a coal, it'd be a different story, right? A person who pours oil into a burning lamp is liable for kindling. Similarly, a person who takes oil from the lamp is liable for extinguishing. Because what did you do? Putting oil in, you're making it to kindle longer. So you're liable.
Structure the oil, of course, is diminish the.
You're diminishing, right? Interesting. To me, that's a chiddush. This is an opinion in the Talmud, and not everybody agrees with
Which one?
what we just said about adding more oil, right? Because you didn't create anything, you just extended something. So therefore, right? You just when you added oil to the lamp, you just extended the fire. You didn't make a fire, or right? You didn't make the fire. So there's a debate about that if that's considered biblical malacha. Again, you're not allowed to do it, right? But that's not the point here in what our studies are. We have to know the difference in the makeup of the law and in the nuance of the law and the parameters of the law, right? So not everybody agrees with that. In the Talmud, there's a debate about it. Okay, should a fire break it on Shabbos? A person is liable if he extinguishes it because of fear of monetary loss. It is only a threat to the loss of laws and not a monetary loss that supersedes the Shabbos prohibitions. So a fire breaks out and you're going to lose money or lose some property. You can't put out the fire. Not allowed to. But if there's a potential loss of life, then yes. That's different. Therefore, all people should leave the area of the blaze so that they do not die. They should not let the fire continue to burn even if they should let the entire fire continue to burn, even if it consumes the entire city. Again, if there's no loss of life, everybody left the city, right? There's no person there. I mean, again, that's a parameter of law. It's very unlikely such a thing. It is permissible to construct a barrier using any type of container, whether full or empty, so the fire will not spread. And so if you want to put barrels of water to contain it, so then when it hits the water, it's going to go out, that's okay. One may even construct a barrier using new earthenware vessels filled with water, although they will surely break and extinguish the fire. It's permissible to cause the fire to extinguish indirectly, because that's indirect. One may place a bowl over a candle so that the light will not catch on the beams of the roof. Yeah, there has to be. It can't be that you're suffocating the fire over here and going to put it out, because then that's directly you put out that fire. There has to be enough ventilation that gets in there so the fire will continue, but it will not hit. Here it's talking about hitting the beams of the roof and start the beams on fire. So that you could do to prevent that. When a fire catches on a perfume box, a chest, or a wooden cabinet, one may bring a goat skin or another substance that will not catch fire and spread it over the portion that has not been consumed, so the fire will not reach there, right? So you could put something there. So once it reaches there, it'll stop it. That's, again, indirect.
Well, it has to be specifically these items that we mentioned.
Well, and no, it doesn't mean specifically. It means those are an example of items that would put out the fire, right? Right. Yeah, that means it's just an example. Number 6, when a garment that is folded catches on fire, one man spread it out and don it. If in the process fire is extinguished, it is not significant. Because again, it's indirect. Similarly, because it's not a for sure thing that is going to go out. Similarly, if a Torah scroll has caught fire, one may unroll it and read from it. If in the process fire is extinguished, it's not significant. One may place water on the portion that has not yet caught fire. If in the process fire is extinguished, it's not significant. And it's not a problem, right? I don't want to use that term, not significant.
Mm-hmm.
Others, by the way, don't allow this. They maintain that although it's permitted to cause a fire to be extinguished indirectly, placing water in such a proximity to the fire is no longer considered indirect. Yeah, in Jewish law, that doesn't accept that opinion. So you could put the water there that is going to extinguish it, right? In other words, you're putting it next to it. You're not putting it over the fire, right? If a person left a burning candle on a board, one may shake the board, causing the candle to fall. If it is extinguished, it's not significant. If he intentionally placed it down before nightfall, it's forbidden to move the board even after the candle is extinguished.
That makes the board with Muksa.
Yeah. Okay. If a fire broke out on Shabbos and non-Jews come there to extinguish, we may not tell them extinguish it, nor must we tell them do not extinguish it. For his resting is not our responsibility. Like if he puts it out because of us, so then for that we're responsible. But if he puts it out, non-Jew can do that, right? We're talking about here, obviously for the benefit of the Jew. If he's doing it for his own benefit, there's not even an issue, right? If the non-Jew is your neighbor, right? Interesting. In contrast, should a child desire to extinguish a fire, he should not allow it if he is acting on his father's behalf. If he's acting his own initiative, the court is not obligated to restrain him. So the child is doing it on his own, it's okay. But he's doing it for his father because his father told him, In the instance of fire, our sage permitted a person to say anyone who extinguishes the fire will not suffer a loss. You could say that. But because you're not telling him directly to go do it. Okay? Transferring objects from one domain to the other is one of the categories of labor that's forbidden on Shabbos. Right? You can't transfer things from one domain to another. So from private domain to public domain to private domain. Although there is prohibition, as all the elements of the body of the Torah law was communicated orally by Moshe as he received them from Sinai, it is alluded to within the Torah itself. It says, in order the announcement be made, no man or woman should do any further work concerning the donations of the sanctuary. And the people stopped bringing their gifts. From this, we can infer that bringing an article from one domain to another is also referred to as a labor. Huh. Interesting. Wow. How do we learn it? Excuse me, I just got to stretch my legs for a moment. We learn it from the fact, right, that they brought, it says that they brought donations for the malacha, for the work of the tabernacle. So the bringing from their home to, through the public domain and bringing it as a gift, that is called, therefore, labor, right? Transferring from one domain to another. Similarly, we have learned, according to the oral tradition, that a person who carries an article from the beginning of a square 4 cubits long to the end of 4 cubits is compared to a person who transfers an article from one domain to another and is liable. So, as there's more than 4 cubits, which means 6 feet, if you carry in the public domain, so it's not from one domain to another, but it's 6 feet, 4 cubits in the public domain, you would be liable. A person who transfers an object from one domain to another is not liable until he transfers an object that is sufficient size to be useful from the private domain to the public domain or from the public domain to the private domain. Similarly, right? So, piece of dust that you are is not, it's not considered an issue, right? You have a little fleck. You have a little fleck on your whatever. That's not, right? Similarly, one must remove the article from one must remove the article from one domain and place it down in the second domain. A person is not liable if he merely removed the article and did not place it down. Another person took it from his hand and placed it down. Placed it down after taking it from the hand of a person, removed it, but did not remove it himself or transfer it less than an amount that is useful. So here, if you take this from the private domain, you picked it up, and you went into you walked outside with it, right? That's a transference. Less than 6 cubits, you walked outside. Right away, you are liable, right? Only, though, if you put it down. If someone took it from your hand and they put it down, they're not liable either. You're not allowed to do it, but they're not, and they walk 6 feet in the public domain. They're not liable. Because there has to be a picking and a putting.
Okay. So
right?
That's the act, picking up and putting down.
Right.
Okay, that sounds legit, yeah.
That's part of the malacha, right? I'm trying to. Similarly, a person who carries an article Who carries an article from the beginning of a square of 4 cubits to the end of the square of the public domain is not liable unless he removes the article significant size from one side of the square and places it down on the other side of the square. Okay, it's we've learned. Okay. I have to stop over here. I'd love to continue, but I can't.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a
All
good
right.
day.
God bless you.